Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, today we're going to connect the dots between a pretty bizarre news headline out of the Philippines and a multi-trillion euro calculation from Norway. Sounds a little weird, right? But trust me, it's all part of the same story. A story about a war that's being fought not just with tanks, but with narratives and spreadsheets.
So we're going to peel back the layers on this really strange accusation. Because when you do, you start to see how modern conflicts are really won and lost. And it's not always on the battlefield. A lot of the time, it's in the court of public opinion.
All right, so where do we even start with this? Well, it all kicks off with this really puzzling accusation that started making the rounds in the international news.
So, Russia's foreign ministry comes out with this super direct claim. They're pointing the finger at a U.S. company, and they say specifically that Filipino nationals are being recruited to fight in Ukraine. I mean, that's a strangely specific charge, right?
And you know, they didn't just leave it at that. They even threw a number out there, $5,000 a month. Now that's a figure that's absolutely designed to do a couple of things. Sound really tempting, sound kind of plausible, and of course, grab headlines.
But as you might expect, the response was swift. I mean, immediate. The Ukrainian and German embassies in Manila came out and just flatly denied it. They called it a baseless fabrication and said it's all part of a much bigger, systematic disinformation campaign.
And here's another really important layer to this. This kind of thing, it's actually illegal under Philippine law. Citizens just aren't allowed to go and join foreign conflicts as mercenaries. So the idea of some big public recruitment drive, it just seems, well, even more unlikely.
Which brings us to the big question, right? If the claim is so easy to shoot down, and it's legally a minefield, then why? Why even make it? What's the real reason for putting a story like this out there? And folks, this is where it starts to get really interesting. To figure this out, we've got to zoom out. We need to look past this one little news story and see the much bigger picture, the broader battlefield. I'm talking about the war for information, the war for perception.
You see, modern conflicts, they're not just fought over territory anymore. They're fought in the headlines. They're fought all over social media, and ultimately, they're fought in our minds. That's what information warfare is all about, using propaganda to get a strategic advantage.
So, the goal here probably isn't to convince, say, world leaders that this recruitment is actually happening. No, the real objective is way more subtle. It's about planting seeds of doubt, creating political distrust, and just moral confusion, especially in countries that might be on the fence or sympathetic to Ukraine. The endgame? Weaken that international support.
And, as it turns out, there's this incredibly powerful, data-driven argument that this whole story seems perfectly designed to attack. An argument that's not about feelings or politics, but about cold, hard cash. So a study just came out from the Norwegian Institute of International Affairs, and it completely reframes the whole conflict. It takes it out of the realm of just ideology and puts it into stark economic terms, specifically for Europe.
And the picture this study paints is, well, it's pretty stark. It basically calculates what happens if Russia wins, and the cost to European nations, you're talking about a massive new refugee crisis, the urgent need for everyone to rearm, could spiral to an incredible 1.6 trillion euros.
Okay, now let's look at the other side of the coin. What's the estimated cost of funding a Ukrainian victory? Well, you add up all the military aid, all the support, and that number comes in way, way lower. We're talking 838 billion euros.
When you see it laid out like this, the argument just clicks. It's so clear. Funding a Ukrainian victory is roughly half the cost of dealing with the consequences of a Russian one. It's a really powerful cost-benefit analysis when you put it that way.
So the conclusion from this study is just unmistakable. It's a huge flashing sign for Western governments. It's basically saying, hey, look, supporting Ukraine isn't just a moral choice. It's actually the most financially responsible thing you can do right now.
Okay, and this is where it all comes together. This is where we can finally see how these two completely different things, this weird news story about mercenaries and this super detailed economic study, are actually, believe it or not, two sides of the exact same coin.
See, that claim about Filipino mercenaries, it's not really meant for diplomats to debate. It's a psychological tool. It's designed to go straight for the gut, to attack the moral foundation of that support, and to make that clean, logical, economic argument feel dirty, to make it feel wrong.
And this just lays out the tactics so perfectly. How do you fight a logical argument about money?
you hit back with a powerful emotional story about exploitation. So on one hand, you have the study saying this is a smart investment, and on the other, you have this counter-narrative saying, oh really? Well, this investment is morally tainted. It's a proxy war, and you're using people from places like the Philippines as pawns. See how that works?
So, what's the big picture here? What does this all really mean? Let's just zoom out one last time and pull out the key takeaways, because this says a lot about what conflict looks like in the 21st century. What this whole case study really shows us is that the modern battlefield is, well, it's incredibly complex. Wars today are fought with spreadsheets and targeted stories just as much as they are with artillery shells. These rational economic arguments have become key strategic targets, and the weapons you use to attack them, they're emotional narratives.
And that really leaves us with a final kind of provocative thought, doesn't it? In a world where stories are specifically crafted to undermine hard data, and where emotions are weaponized to cloud logic, maybe, just maybe, the most important battlefield of all isn't on any map. Maybe it's the space right between our ears.